Hey everyone, welcome back to First-Hand Globetrotting. So far on my Canadian trip, I've gone to the capital, some incredible nature sites, and one of the biggest cities. But on my last stop, I'm not going to any big-name tourist spots. I'm headed to Nova Scotia to spend some time relaxing along the Northumberland Shore. It's going to be quiet, peaceful, relaxing, and a great way to end my Canadian trip. So my days aren't going to be nearly as busy as most of my trips, and most of my stops are going to be off the beaten path, but it's still going to be a great time. The great thing about Nova Scotia is that you're never too far from the ocean, so of course I had to start my trip by the water. As I was driving down the coast, it seemed like you couldn't go more than 15 or 20 miles without running into another little fishing harbor. And one of the best things about fishing harbors like these is that there's usually a couple of seafood restaurants nearby. I could eat seafood chowder for pretty much every meal, so I made sure to have a nice big bowl of it along with some fish cakes. After I was nice and full from lunch, it was time to get a little closer to the water and walk along the coastline. One of the things I love about this area is how much the shoreline can change within a few miles. To start, there are some nice sandy warm water beaches that are great for swimming. These are the kind that we all expect when we hear the word beach. But then a little further down, you come to another beach that's made of tiny little stones. It almost looks like black sand, but the little rocks are actually a bunch of different colors. And if you walk a little further down, you get to areas made of these huge flat rocks. All of the grooves and holes in them make their own small little pools of water filled with seaweed and other tiny sea creatures. And then things start to get really rocky and jagged and rough. I love just sitting and watching the waves crash against the huge piles of rocks. Definitely not a place you'd go swimming, but a great place to just enjoy the coastline. But as I said before, all of these different spots were within a few miles of each other. You go from nice sandy swimming beaches to waves crashing against jagged rocks all within a short walk. I'm a sucker for a nice coastline, so needless to say I spent a lot of time walking the coast. And of course, any good oceanfront area is going to have some nice lighthouses. Since they need to be easily visible from the water, it means that they're usually in some of the most picturesque coastal spots. If I see a lighthouse on a drive, it's a pretty safe bet that I'm going to pull over and take a picture or two. On day 2, I decided to leave the coast and go to one of the small cities nearby. As I'd been driving around, I noticed that nearly every town sign was in 2 languages, English and Scottish Gaelic. I guess it's not all that unexpected since Nova Scotia means New Scotland, but it was really surprising that they still have that connection to Gaelic. There were also people playing bagpipes at a few of the public events I went to. So it was definitely really cool to see how they've kept this culture alive so many years after the Scottish settlers came over to this area. And while I was in town, I made sure to have a pretty well-known Nova Scotia snack food, the donair. As you can see, it's kind of like one of the doner kebab sandwiches you get all over the world, but the secret to the Nova Scotia donair is the sweet garlic sauce. After that, I spent some more time exploring the town and checking out a local art festival. But I made sure to get back to the water before it got dark. Whenever I'm by the water, I always try to catch at least one sunrise or sunset. As the sun went down, all I could see was the jagged Nova Scotia coastline, the ocean stretching off for miles, and the sun slowly dipping itself into the ocean. I mean, come on, is there really anything better than sitting back with a drink and a snack and watching the sky turn orange as the sun sets? On to day 3 and I'm back out walking up and down the coastline. Mostly I was just walking around, finding nice spots to sit for a few minutes and watching the waves hit the shore. And then, partway along my walk, I came across a little waterfall. So yeah, the only thing better than the Nova Scotia coastline is finding a waterfall that makes a little stream out into the ocean. Just being able to dip my feet in the cool waterfall water made the morning walk completely worth it. Nova Scotia has a lot of coastline, but if you go inland, there's also a lot of forest there. So I spent most of the afternoon hiking through the bush, seeing what I could find in there with all the trees. And no trip to Nova Scotia would be complete without a little bit of lobster. One of my favorite ways to eat lobster is in a lobster roll, so I made sure to get myself a nice big one. But just like that, my trip to Nova Scotia was over and I was wrapping up my Canadian vacation. This was a perfect way to end an amazing trip. Just a nice, relaxing few days spent almost entirely by the ocean. No big tourist spots, no big cities, just enjoying the coastline with some great food. But if you want to check out any of the other stops on my Canadian vacation, links are in the video description. And while you're at it, make sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. On Instagram, I'm Firsthand Globetrotting. On Twitter, I'm Firsthand Globe. Follow me on there. And don't forget, it's an incredible world out there, so pick up your passport and do some firsthand globetrotting of your own.